Hello guys, today it's finally model building time again. My fingers were tingling to build my old M4 Sherman from Tamiya in 1/35 scale. It just made me so happy that I simply had to build it. So that's why I skipped the F84 project for a moment, and in this video I will show you how to build this beautiful kit from Tamiya, the Easy 8 M4 Sherman. So let's start. First of all, we come to the assembly. The kit is in the usual Tamiya quality, super accurate and easy to work with. I decided to assemble as many components as possible and divide the kit into individual segments. Complete assembly makes little sense from my point of view, as it would be far too complicated to paint clear parts or add on parts afterwards. That's why I divided the kit into the segments turret, hull and running gear. There are certainly other views on this, but it sounds plausible to me. As already mentioned, the kit is really great, the components are well cast and require little finishing. And here and there are weld seams or gaps to fill, but this is really kept to a minimum. I will show you later on how and what is needed to be done. For gluing, I recommend the extra thin cement from Tamiya. It is very thin and its capillarity effect is also really great for fixing components without leaving much adhesive residues, and also for quickly generating adhesive strength. As the brush in a bottle is really very small, I have now taken an old brush to quickly coat larger areas with glue and work more cleanly. The turret is divided into two cast halves and leaves a seam when glued, which is not present on the real one. The turret was either cast in one piece or welded. In my opinion, the Sherman turrets were cast and therefore have the uneven surface. To remove the gap, I used Mr. Surfacer 500 or 1000 filler and applied it in depths with an old brush. This allows me to recreate the texture of the turret or emphasize it in one or two places. It's important to allow the filler to set briefly and then dab it on. You may also need to apply a second coat. Once everything is dried properly and you're happy with the result, it's time to paint. Oh yes, one more step back. If the effect on the turret is too strong, you can soften it a little with wet sandpaper and water. But now back to the paint. As usual, I decided to paint the model with a black primer. You can use this to create fake shadows or prevent the plastic from showing through if you can't apply the paint evenly everywhere in the subsequent steps. I first considered using black and white pre-shading method, but then I decided to go to the color modulation with different shades of green. I used XF67 NATO Green as the base color. I applied this very thinly to the individual components. Depending on the coverage, I also applied it in 2 or 3 cloudy coats with circular movements of the airbrush. The advantage of the Tamiya paints is that they dry very quickly and you can see immediately what the result looks like. For the color modulation, I decided to mix 3 different shades. To do this, add XF57 buff to the base color. The color white would be too cool for me and would make the model look too pale. Buff has the advantage that it is simply more pleasant and warmer. You can use slightly stronger gradations of the color when mixing. The washing and the weathering steps will significantly soften the effect. It is also important that you mix enough paint for the model and preferably fill it into old Tamiya jars or bottles. This will ensure that there are no color differences between the turret, hull and running gear or add-on parts in later steps. For the color modulation, you should also take your time and glue the model onto a holder as shown here so that you can turn it in any desired direction or not have to touch it too often with your fingers. You can also use a stencil or masking tape to mask off the key areas. You can use a piece of cardboard to create sharp edges between the color or the highlight areas. The important thing here is to work in several thin layers of paint and, as the word modulation suggests, to build up the layers step by step. Think about how and where the exposed areas are located on the model and create the contrast to the model. Always remember, the higher, the brighter. Continue this step until you have achieved the desired result. Just like a good painter or an artist, you should step back from the work of art, take a break and let the model project its magic on you. In my opinion, there's no valid formula. Beauty is always in the eye of the beholder. With good lighting, patience and several applications of paint, you can quickly see the difference and you are on the way to a great base for future steps. If you want to do the whole thing over several days, I recommend covering the model with a thin film or foliage to prevent the dust from setting. I bought some foliage from a DIY store that is normally used for masking windows or moldings. It is very light and does no damage to any small parts or on the model itself. Once we have finished applying the paint and modulated the color work, we can turn our attention to the first small details. Gun cradle protection is one of the details you can use to create the first contrasts. These protections are usually olive green, but I wanted to bring a little more variation into play here with brown. You can create a nice color gradient with the 3 Vallejo colors shown here. It is important that you let the colors dry for a few minutes before turning to the next step, just to make sure that you don't remove the old color every time when you paint the next layer. In thin layers you can create a nice depth effect. In the meantime, you can apply the decals, for example. This should be enough time for the first layer paint to dry. The decals are not quite as good as those of other manufacturers, so that I pour one of the decals when applying it and had real trouble getting it back to the original state. You should keep calm here and use tweezers to push the decals back into the correct position. In my opinion, it's really pain in the ass just when things like this happen. And one important thing is just calm down, focus, and do the best job you can to fix it. If you are satisfied with the result on the gun cradle, we can move on to the next step. Now it's time to further accentuate or highlight individual areas. To do this, use a very light green. In this case, I used interior light green from AK to highlight bolts, edges and optics. You should also work in very thin layers and apply it in 1 or 2 coats. Don't worry if it looks too extreme. The washing and the resin process will significantly reduce it. Let everything dry well. Again, I recommend waiting at least 12 hours before continuing with further steps. The model still looks a little pale now, so in the next step we will create more contrast by applying a wash. There are many options here, either with oils or animal paints. In this case, I used AK dark brown wash for green vehicle. But however, you have to make sure that you have coated the entire model in a set varnish beforehand to prevent the paint from eating into the color too quickly. Many models use a matte varnish and are then surprised that they have unsightly edges or that the wash looks too extreme. Apply the paint with a thin brush, let dry for a few minutes and remove the excess paint with odorless thinner. So folks, that's it for the first part of the Sherman M4. In the next part we will focus on the chipping and adding the small but nice details to the model. I hope you had fun. Leave a comment. I would be delighted if you subscribe, and wish you a happy model. See you next time, and thanks for watching.